So the name of the organization is the National Association of Drug Diversion Investigators, also known as NADDI, N-A-D-D-I. And we're here today at the NADDI Southern Regional Conference, and we're training representatives from all over the state in various different industries, pharmaceutical, law enforcement, medical, pharmacists in the area. We're coming all together to learn about drug diversion, investigation, and how to put a stop to the crisis that we see all over the country.
The National Association of Drug Diversion Investigators, NADDI, has been around for 33 years. We're involved in training, education and training in the abuse and diversion of pharmaceutical drugs. Unfortunately, law enforcement today, as 30 years ago, still receives little to no training in the abuse and diversion of pharmaceutical drugs. Even going through their academies and extra training that they receive on the job, it's all about illicit drugs, heroin, cocaine, meth, marijuana. But our organization is focused on education and training in the abuse and diversion of pharmaceutical drugs. And one of the great things about our organization is how we partner and collaborate our law enforcement community with the private sector.
NADDI's goal is to bring together people who can really make a difference. So again, law enforcement, pharmaceutical, medical, healthcare. We want to bring together all of those partners, educate them about the problems that we're seeing, educate them how to investigate issues, report matters that they become aware of, and also we want them to collaborate, because we find that one of the best ways that we can attack this problem is collaboration across all industries.
I don't think that Louisiana is too much different really than any other state. Especially because we're a little bit closer to the border in Louisiana, and unfortunately many of our problems that we see with our pharmaceutical drugs and our illicit drugs come south of the border.
One of the biggest problems that we're seeing right now is with fentanyl. So there's two forms of fentanyl. We have pharmaceutical fentanyl, which is completely legal and legitimate and life-saving. It's utilized in surgeries and in post-operative pain or any type of chronic pain issues. Where fentanyl becomes a problem is illicit fentanyl that is brought in from other countries and unfortunately is being laced into illicit drugs on the street. So we see it in cocaine and heroin, marijuana, and unfortunately a lot of the focus of this organization is on the pharmaceutical products, and we're seeing situations where people are illegally obtaining pill presses and are making products that appear to be legitimate pharmaceuticals, but they are not, and many times they are laced with fentanyl. And anyone who is obtaining what they believe to be a pharmaceutical, but they're obtaining it through other than mainstream sources, they can potentially get their hands on these products that are laced with fentanyl. And fentanyl is deadly. It is many, many more times more potent than morphine. And the amount of fentanyl that would fit on the tip of a pin is enough to kill a human. So it's a very dangerous situation. We are seeing fentanyl overdose deaths all across the country. The DEA recently issued an alert for fentanyl cluster deaths. And that is a situation where law enforcement is coming upon groups of people who have all partaken in the same drug source and are all deceased.
With pharmaceutical drugs, it really is, it changes on us. When there are some sort of cycles that happen on a regular basis. I mean, if you remember when we were dealing with pill mills back in the late 90s, and there was a huge abuse of opioids, hydrocodone, oxycodone. Now we're seeing other drugs that are being abused also on the street, that they're being sold. Unfortunately, I think the biggest problem that we're seeing now is the abuse by the younger population. And it really is exasperated by online sales, by different websites that the younger kids are on. And I know from my own grandchildren, every time I see them, they're on their iPad, they're on their phone, they're on something, they're chatting. But that, unfortunately, is what we're seeing as our pharmaceutical drugs become more abused by a younger population. And then being abused, we see more, unfortunately, overdose deaths by a younger population. And then we're seeing more counterfeit drugs being brought in that, unfortunately, as I said earlier, exasperates that problem of abuse and diversion.
There are lots of different trends. We are definitely seeing the overdoses with fentanyl all across the country, most certainly in Louisiana. Another trend that we're also seeing in Louisiana is related to promethazine with codeine. So promethazine with codeine is a cough syrup. However, there is a big trend, particularly among high school and college age students, where they drink large quantities. They might drink a whole bottle of the cough syrup, and it results in hallucinations and potentially in death. Just last week, there was a seizure in the Baton Rouge area on I-10, a vehicle traffic stop that resulted in, I believe it was 100 bottles of promethazine with codeine that were headed for the streets in Louisiana.
I think right now what we're seeing is more online issues, products being bought online, and then those products unfortunately have a higher problem because they have some other illicit drugs mixed in. So it's not the drugs that you or I would be buying from our pharmacy or the drugs that our doctors would be prescribing. It's drugs that are made by, say, the bad guys, the criminal element. Unfortunately, the cartels that we're seeing coming out of Mexico and coming into the U.S. And those drugs contain a product called fentanyl, which is unfortunately very deadly. And they're making these products. They're making the pharmaceutical drugs to look exactly like the drugs that you or I would be purchasing in a pharmacy. And there's really no way to tell the difference. And that's why this abuse and diversion and unfortunately overdose deaths is becoming much higher, not only in Louisiana, but throughout the U.S.
I'm very proud to say Blue Cross's mission is to improve the health and lives of Louisianians. And Blue Cross is hardcore about that promise. So Blue Cross is heavily involved in NADI. I am the manager of special investigations at Blue Cross, and I am the president of Louisiana NADI, as well as the NADI South Central Regional Director over the 6-state region for Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. So lots of responsibility there. Blue Cross really puts the support behind NADI, our initiatives in Louisiana and nationally as well. Blue Cross is a proud sponsor of Drug Take Back Day. That is a DEA event that happens twice yearly in April and October. Blue Cross hosts, along with the Baton Rouge Police Department, a drop-off location in the Baton Rouge area. And Blue Cross also partners with the Louisiana Attorney General's Office and NADI to place permanent prescription drug drop boxes in almost every parish in the state of Louisiana. And those are for use by the public to dispose of unused, unwanted medications, potentially after a surgery or an illness. Keeping those medications in the home can result in them getting in the hands of people and animals that they don't need to be with. So we have those permanent drug drop boxes that anyone can drop off throughout the year.
Unfortunately, overdoses are on the rise. I want to say they started taking a downward trend before COVID. Then COVID hit. Unfortunately, during COVID, our law enforcement community, our medical community that were working on or would be involved in pharmaceutical drugs, abuse and diversion, got moved into other arenas to help with the COVID issue. And then we saw another trend going up during COVID, and now that trend continuing to rise. And we've hit already a major problem in May with overdose deaths in the U.S. I think vigilant, especially if you're a parent, if you're a grandparent, if you're a teacher, if you're involved with youth sports, you have to be vigilant what our children are doing. There's always been some issues, even in the sports world or in their community, with one child or one kid, a young kid, passing on a pill to someone else. It was always, could have been alcohol involved. Hey, let's try this beer, let's try this drink. Now let's try this pill. And unfortunately, we really don't know, as I said earlier, where that pill came from. It's not something that would be prescribed by a physician and that we would be purchasing in a pharmacy. Many of these drugs, unfortunately, are being purchased online. And as I said, they mimic the color, the markings on the pill. And so we have no idea that those drugs don't even contain the active ingredient that we would be purchasing that pill for.
So our ceremony this morning is very special to us. We're opening up with a tribute to law enforcement officers who have lost their lives within the last 2 years.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. If you would, we're going to have a moment of silence. We would like to take just a few minutes and sit in silence while we review, while we take a look at the PowerPoint. We've gone ahead and memorialized the short memorial for each officer that we've lost over the last 2 years that we haven't been able to meet with Natty. So please take a moment, pray for their families, and pray that we don't lose any more officers, which I know is a lofty prayer, but Godspeed with all of you every day.
These are the last few words I'd like to say to you all. This is my last call. Tell my wife I love her, and they don't be home tonight. Thank her for those long, hard years that we tried to get it right. Tell her I'll be waiting, that she makes it through it all. This is my last call. But ask her to forgive me. Tell her I'm sorry. That I can't be the man that she's gonna be. Tell her I'll be waiting where the winter meets the fall. This is my last call. Tell my children that
So not a lot that can be said after that. As Captain Murphy said, that list of officers is way too long. We offer up a prayer that there would be no more deaths. We know that won't happen, but we offer it up. I do ask that you think of these officers, their families, the departments. Many of the departments are represented here today. So particularly for those of you who are from a department who has lost an officer, our thoughts and our prayers are with you. We know this is particularly painful for you, as it is for all of us. My reaction to today is it's fantastic. We've brought together over 100 people from all across the country to support this effort, to learn and to collaborate with one another. And we know that this organization makes a difference. So we'll proudly continue what we do. Blue Cross will continue to support it, and we'll save lives.
How can people get more information?
You can get more information by visiting our website at naddi.org. And there's also information regarding our prescription drug drop boxes on the Blue Cross website and the DEA website as well.